All right. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. For the first time that people watching the show, this is a show about artists sharing their ways of dealing with depression on the conquest of learning art. So today, I'm so happy we get Mr. Amundsen with us, the Tank Top Gang. And
Yeah, tank top guy.
yeah, thank you very much from my heart for this experience. I hope it will be a pleasant experience for you as well. So
Yeah, I think so.
without further ado, can you share a bit about your journey in art?
Yeah, so like on the topic of like mental health and art, I've been really lucky. I come out of the Norwegian educational system, and so like a lot of my friends internationally, anyway, who are artists, actually in Norway as well, like have had this like do or die moment, this thing of which must be a terrible mental pressure, this thing of like this is part of my soul, and I must drive my will into the world. And like if you're a 15-year-old Norwegian kid, right, you're just out of junior high into like high school, and they're like, hey, you like drawing? And I was like, yeah. And they're like, hey, you want to spend like 30% of your schooling time doing that? I was like, yeah, that'd be great, thank you. And that's how they kind of ease you in. And the thing is, like, there's no strings attached, as it were. Like, you don't have to go into art if you go into that specialization. So my sister went into music and she pivoted to like engineering. So it's not like it niches you. It's not like it stops you from doing stuff. It's just that it's kind of, so at 15, 16, we're considered like adults in Norway, apart from alcohol, which is 18. But so like you get your confirmation and shit when you're 15. And so like the society kind of tells you you're an adult. So it's time for some choices, you know. So it feels very cohesive. It's like, okay, I'm taking the first steps on the next like journey of my life or whatever. Um, and that, I mean, if you put it like that, it can sound kind of, you know, like naive and whatever, but it is really useful because that's the biggest difference I know with Norwegians and education and most other people with education and their education is that Norwegians, for the most part, like we take it for granted, unfortunately. But when we talk about it, it's like, oh yeah, we got to check that shit out.
I heard about it. I have
Um,
a Norwegian friend, and he's sharing
mm,
with me his education system. I'm like, what? 16? That's a
yeah,
really
yeah.
kick-ass system. Like for me, I was actually talking with my friend. He has a gallery teaching art now. He has a workshop,
Mhm,
and then we are just talking about, hey, remember back in art school? So I'm already fortunate. I got into a art school where we have art
mhm,
lessons more than other normal schools in Hong Kong. But I,
mhm.
I was just talking with him. Remember that no teacher talked about like core shadows and reflected light and those kind of stuff in a art focused school. Yeah. So that's what's happening here.
Yeah, and like you know, like one of the great so one of the great sort of through lines of my artistic education has been Andrew Loomis, right? Like I'm a great worshiper at the statue of Loomis. I think he's like you know I love me some Hogarth and I love me like a lot of those you know deconstructivists, but Loomis's method is so much more like honest. It's not like here is how you construct a muscle group. It's like, hey, everything's broken down into like really simple figures. And if you can shade those simple figures, you can figure out everything else. So just get this through your head, right? And so you combine that with some lessons on like perspective, and you're like, oh, I can draw these like abstract sort of mannequin figures. And that's kind of all you need because once you're there, you can just start like layering other shapes on top and you can kind of figure it
Yeah,
out.
it's an easy
Um,
system to build up on, right? Imagine,
exactly.
imagine that my teacher back in that day, he just showed me that book. It would be so much better. Like here's a Loomis book, read it instead of like draw. Like I remember, like a part of my memory is like I'm actually doing studies, so we are forced to do a portrait study for our exams, and I don't understand the head so well. So I instead of like drawing the portrait that I'm required to, I'm just breaking down the head myself and doing studies. And my teacher was like,
Mhm.
"Hey, this is a portrait lesson. What the hell are you doing?" And I'm forced
Oh, he was
practically.
giving you shit for actually doing studies?
Yes. So I was like, I was like naturally drawn to it, right? I don't understand the head. I need to figure it out and then stuff like that. It's like, no, we're doing like the Asian thing, right? We're doing a portrait study.
Hmm.
Like you finish the whole portrait, please. Like
Yeah.
stuff like that. So
Then
Yeah,
no,
it took a
that's
lot of time for me to rediscover that stuff. But
yeah, man. I
yeah,
think in art schools in general, they should switch out the word study, which is like figure shit out, right? Like because study seems so like specific and like beatific, like you have to make nice studies. But if it's just like, hey, can you figure out how the nose works? People be like,
mm,
oh yeah, yeah, okay, I get what you mean. Like, because that's weird
yeah,
too.
like,
Like,
it's like,
it took me like 10 years.
yeah, it takes the fun out of it too. It's like exploring, right? Just
Hmm.
explore what it feels like a little
Hmm.
visual scientist. Like already that
Exactly.
phrasing make it more interesting, especially for kids when
Right.
you're learning, right?
Become like the Bill Nye of art education. Just like
Yeah,
come in, it's like figure it out, kids. It's
yeah,
exciting.
that's exactly it. Like all of us, when we don't understand something, hey teacher, can you help me with this? You don't understand because you're not drawing enough. Why aren't you drawing
And
harder? Draw harder,
I
you
mean,
won't
I
have.
mean, I mean, technically, right? Like from that teacher's perspective, and this is
Mhm,
like something I learned when I was in England because I went to after I went to this art high school.
mhm.
I went to art school in Norway for 2 years, and then I got into like an art program in Falmouth in Cornwall in England, which is it was great fun. But they didn't like digital art at all.
Mm.
Um,
Evil witchcraft, right?
Yeah, yeah. Like they like I brought my laptop in to do life drawing, and my teacher literally went like, "Ew," uh, did not fucking like that. But the truth in what your teacher was saying was right. Like before there was the internet and all these like readily available resources, literally the only way people knew how to get better at drawing was to just sit down and fucking do it, right? So that's the basis for so many of like the famous Disney artists and a lot of like the California scene is that thing of like, oh, you go in, you show the hustle, you got to get those 10,000 hours down. It only took, how was the time? I just got to check. It
Yeah,
took my computer like a good, oh no, and it's frozen again. All right, this computer has problems. Anyway,
fine. The
um,
the video is fine. Yeah.
yeah, it's,
Oh,
oh yeah, no, we're on the iPad, so it's okay.
I see.
Um,
Your
but
preferred
yeah, like,
instrument, right?
yeah, oh, it's my little baby. But, so I think that kind of pays into like a point about mental health when it comes to art, because a lot of the time, the previous kind of generation of practitioners can make it feel like mysticism, right? Like there's all these like things you got to learn, and there's jargon, there's this like deep vault of secrets that you got to break open, and then you get on the inside and you're like, fuck, were you making this so difficult for? Just tell me that a core shadow is a goddamn point where ambient light fails to illuminate the form. Like this isn't fucking rocket science. But then rather than giving a clear-cut technical definition of something, the major feedback we ever got, like for example in life drawing, was what the fuck does feel the form means? Somebody's
Yeah,
gonna have to slap the
yeah,
goddamn goodwill out of one of my old
yeah.
teachers because that's the
I think
most
one of it
frustrating
is
thing.
trying to keep you in school longer. Like imagine they have a clear cut. How do they get your money for years, right? If they give you a clean cut answer, they're like, yeah,
That's a
teasing
good.
it.
That's,
Or most of the time, maybe he doesn't know, or even he knows. He's like, yeah, if I teach him, how can I run a 2 year program, like ridiculously expensive 2 year program, right?
I see. Like seeing as like Norway's kind of a haven for that. Like even though everything else is expensive here, this shit was pretty cheap. So like me going to art
Mm-hmm.
school, for example, was not very expensive.
It sounds like
So
a great system
so
as
like
well.
yeah, it's pretty all right. But like on the other hand, the flip side of that, for example, in Norway, and again, this touches on that thing of both imposter syndrome
Mm,
and this kind of nebulous fear that there is no place for you in the sort of community and or industry.
mm-hmm,
Um, we were more or less we were given courses at art school on researching and applying for grant money,
mm-hmm.
like that. This, not that that's a bad thing, right? Like applying for grant money is instrumental and it's important, but when that is a thing that you have to teach your art students because there isn't
Ah,
enough of an art market to support them, maybe like be front and center about that. Because of the 20 something class that I
yeah,
was in art school with, like four of us do anything tangentially related to art.
yeah.
That's an insane rate. And I mean, again, like if this had been an expensive school,
Same,
somebody
same,
would have gotten
same. Here,
sued or shot because
here as well.
that's criminal. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. They didn't tell you. Like, most likely, you won't get any money after this class. It's hard to tell you, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I think. So there are schools that are more technically minded, right? And I think
Hmm.
we're kind of diving down a rabbit hole here now. But
No,
like just to
it's all right.
sort of
I
yeah,
love
just
it.
to like individually criticize every art institution in Scandinavia. But
we can
but there's
we can
there's
open
a
a separate show for that. What's wrong about this?
art,
It sounds fun. But yeah, for
yeah,
the sake of the keeping in line, so are there any
yeah.
emotional challenges you need to deal with
Mm.
on that passage?
Yeah, so let's talk about like the first and most obvious one, which is like that sort of nebulous confusion and fear of there just not being enough. Like whenever you're starting out, just have no goddamn idea. I didn't know until I got into art school. I didn't know there was a thing called concept art. Before I got into art school, I didn't know that there was a career out there for me to get. And my mom and dad have just always like this is again like I always feel like weird about giving any kind of hints or anything on art education because I'm like I was literally the luckiest dude you could ever imagine. Like I'm white and I'm privileged and I'm from Norway and my parents are tolerating like the fact that I do art. So it's like I can't like if it
Yeah,
makes me
yeah,
upset, it's probably like a Tuesday for everybody else. But
yeah.
um, but so like for like up until that point, there was no real sort of direction. And then once I kind of found concept art, it was like, okay, this seems cool. I'm gonna
Yeah,
go for this and kind of figure that out. That kind of been like the direction ever since. But
yeah.
that's insane. Like the fact that there isn't more of like the fact that the educational system for artists
Hmm.
so often, and I'm saying this because this is a story that has like gotten reflections from a lot of other artists that I know. The fact that like this art education is broken in a
Yeah,
very sort of substantial way, and I don't think it's so much that people don't have
and
access
it
to
has a
Loomis books.
serious lag for it. Like it
Mhm.
will never catch up to what's happening in the real world, especially concept art, right? Because for
Well, I
me,
think
yes, sorry, for
at,
me it was like
let, yeah. No, go
it's not
ahead. Go ahead.
like
Sorry.
everyone here goes into graphic design. Like if you like drawing, graphic design. If you like painting,
Hmm.
graphic design. Hey, you probably find a job in graphic design, but there's nothing
Yeah.
else
Right.
there. Like if you want to do
Hmm.
concept, like you're pretty much dead here. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's you can. I'm trying to make sure I'm keeping to the red thread of like mental challenges. But I
Yeah,
think that's a
yeah.
good one. Like I think a lot of people get into this industry tangentially. I think you can see that because the thing that they should be teaching you in school is like what concept art is, what concept art does, what your role is. Like you're not just working as a printing machine for writers and artistic developers. You're supposed to be putting influences and statements in for yourself. And so like in I think that the next thing you're gonna see, sort of on a big scale, or at least the next big shift, is going to be and sort of an academic revolution. You're gonna be seeing people actually doing actual academic work on this, and we're gonna be starting to get like actual constructive jargon that is
Hmm.
useful and not just like, hey, do it more impressionistically. And then well, we can actually talk about like what separates the different genres of concept art. We can have aestheticism and we can have conceptivism and we can have all these things, but we got to be able to talk about it because right now all you have is like, hey, it's on the front page of ArtStation, so it's good. And I'm not saying that that's wrong, but I'm saying like that's a little simplistic, and nature, as much as anything else, abhors simplicity, right? And so like I feel like that's the good fight, is this thing of like, no, insist that the person should have to strip away like all the drawing and all the fancy graphics and just explain your character. If you can do that and it's cool, I think we're all down. But if you can't, you might have to go back and rewrite that character a bit, right? Like I feel like there's that brings me like my first sort of big panic in concept art, because so many times the big breaks that, and not in a positive way, like the big breakdowns I've ever had, is this thing like, what the fuck am I doing? Why am I drawing my 19th red-headed dwarf who is angry? Like, what is this? Why and it feels so, and it might be, but it feels so much like being a whingy child, because I am a grown adult who gets to sit and draw dragons and dwarves and things for a living, and I love that. Trust me, I love that. So even in the best of things, I have friends who are baristas, and like, when you hear a barista bitching about bad coffee beans, you're like, your life is coffee, buddy. Like, you can't.
Yeah.
No one should bitch about coffee. It's
Yeah.
an amazing thing. But
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like that thing where we I mean, you could see this as a positive thing too, right? Like we are in such a young industry that hasn't
Yeah,
really defined itself yet.
yeah.
But I feel like because our industry is part of such a wealth of other edutainment, um,
The root
entertainment
of
industries.
entertainment. The
Well, not so much the root as just like we're kind of like a visual language creator, right? And if the
mm,
language doesn't work, then nothing else works. So
mm-hmm,
like when you look at the break between people who like and don't like Marvel movies, for example, a lot of it's in the visuals, and it's this
mm-hmm.
thing of like whether you're on the inside or the outside. And I'm feeling like a lot of people think that that means that's strong concept design. And I'm like, nah, I feel like that's really, really, really sort of reluctant design that's just relying on its own sort of inbred success measures.
Mm-hmm.
And there are people who like that, but like there's a vast audience. I think people don't
Yeah.
really realize how vast an audience who just like are dialed out of that shit permanently now
Yeah.
because it's just recycling. I feel like maybe I'm going off on a weird rant now, but the point being, like I feel
So
like
how
that's
did you go through the thing that I've joined this like 19th dwarf? Like how did you tackle that?
well, so my parents are engineers, right? And and my sister's an engineer, and my brother-in-law is an engineer. My grandpa was an engineer. So like engineering is a weird sort of mesh in with art, but that's
Yeah.
kind of how I do
The
it. So I
technical
like to
side.
break things down.
Yeah,
Exactly,
you're a
right?
very technical person. Yeah.
Yeah. So I like to break things down to like the lowest common denominators, and then I like to like fuck with them, you know. So like
Yeah.
if there is my 19 dwarf, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna strip away the beard, I'm gonna strip away the axe, I'm gonna strip away the helmet, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
gonna look at this person and be like, who is this person? And then I can think about, you know, like if it's a vain sort of like a fun combination thing can be like a vainly masculine person, you know. So you could have like a dwarf who's really like a gym bro and like you know,
Yeah.
and you can kind of find these fun archetypes to juxtapose and play with, and you can do
Yeah.
that. But again, like that takes that's so much below the surface of the drawing. So like
Yeah.
drawing is a huge part of my life, but like
Yeah.
that's not where I start at all.
It's like people saying like the iceberg, right? You don't see the huge part under it, like
Hmm.
the character development and all of that stuff, and what makes the character tick instead of another generic design. You need to this is under the water. That's why the public doesn't see it, right? The huge amount of the iceberg.
Hmm.
The people just see that little bit and they think, ah, that's it, right? Instead of like
Yeah.
that huge growing time and development under the water, right?
That's
Yeah,
exactly that, and it's I think that's like the major thing. That's realization that this job isn't just sitting down and drawing stuff you've been told to draw.
mm-hmm.
It's sitting down and like building worlds, and I think an awareness of that like overarching discipline
Yeah,
is a great way of not getting panic attacks. because
yeah,
because not being aware of it and just kind of jumping and going like I'm gonna draw something, and then you come out
yeah,
the other side like beaten up and bloody and like, oh, I didn't go so well. Like
yeah,
that can be a great way of getting a depression, and that was like my first 3 years of concept design.
yeah. So how did you get yourself out of that semi-depressed state?
So this is a bit of it's a bigger story because it pertains to like a couple of things. But so like a big part of my development was getting into this company called Volta, and it's an outsourcing studio in Canada, and it's a good studio. And in that studio, you know, I started out as like a junior artist, so I was the young pup coming in learning. I was like, there were legends there, man. There were like Ruan Jia was there, and Yun Ling was there, and Fred Rambo was there. It's fucking amazing. Like if you ever felt like out of inspiration, you go into the next room and just have a look, and you'd be like, oh
Yeah.
my god, you know, it's crazy.
Wow.
And so that was like the first couple of years, and then you know things moved around a little bit. The industry changed a little bit. Some of the staffing kind of changed,
Yeah.
and so towards the end, like I had picked up a lot of like drawing skills and painting skills, but we were doing outsourcing, right? So we were never part of pre-production or early concept work. So by the
Mm-hmm.
time like concept work got to us, it was all fairly well thought out, or at least they
Mm-hmm.
had a brief 40
They
pages long, and we had to
already
memorize
have
it.
an idea. They just need you to visualize it, which I
Yeah,
think you
exactly.
enjoy the creative part most, right? Me understanding you
Yes.
as a person. Yeah, yeah.
And not to be
So
like
it's
that
like
guy,
taking
but
taking away the fun
also,
from you, right? If it's that much developed, and even a lot of the times you might not have any say for it if the company is already like 40 page deep into this org. You're like, maybe I wanna like, yeah, it's not,
yeah, exactly.
yeah,
And it's this thing of you know like a lot of the so it's not that it's worked out that bothers me, it's that it's worked out poorly. And when I
And
say
you can't
things
say
like that,
anything
it's like,
about it, right?
oh, yeah, exactly. You have to wait till you're drunk after hours and go like, don't they understand how chainmail works? And then I can sit
Yeah,
over my
yeah.
pint of mead and fucking, but like stuff like that is incredibly frustrating because you, like, for example, I went to work at Blizzard for a couple of years, or for a couple of months. It was supposed to be a couple of years, but I lasted about 6 months because they originally they were going to get me on this like one project, which was going to be like semi-realistic and stuff, and that was really cool. And they were like, we're bringing you in because you have armor knowledge and because you can
Mm-hmm.
kind of bring like a real world aspect to things.
Mm-hmm.
But then when I got there, that project had been scrapped. So I got to work on the cinematics team instead, which was awesome. Like I loved working with the cinematics team. It was amazing. Laurel
Yeah.
Austin was there and Jake Panion was there. It was like,
Wow.
whoa, again, like sitting around a bunch of legends, just watching them do amazing stuff. It's like,
Yeah.
it's both humbling. So sort of, it's a great way again of just sitting there going like, oh my God, I'm never going to be this good. But it was also incredibly frustrating because it was a part of sort of the scope of stuff I had no experience in. Like cinematic art is not something I have done a lot of. I can do
Yeah.
it, but I'm not like
Yeah.
particularly fast. And these people had like special brushes for everything, and they were fucking like amazingly quick and disciplined. And I'm sitting there going like, so I think maybe these candles don't work. Like, it was like real sort of concept obsessed, but that thing of sort of getting past that, of being able to let go of this stuff a little bit, that comes from this guy who I met at Volta called Arno Foot, who is a fantastic concept designer who no one ever hears about because he is very bad at self-promoting, but he's had like a really distinguished career in the industry, and he's just this like fucking solid to the core guy who you can just like throw any problem at and he'll give you 14 solutions and they'll all be brilliant and always boil down to like a really simple little concept thing, which is
So he's
great.
in
And
the Blizzard cinematic team.
no, he was a Volta and now I think he's at
Oh,
like
I see.
Eidos or
Okay.
something. Yeah, he's up in Montreal. And like his whole thing, like I was, a young pup coming out of art school, and I was, well, you want the glory, you want to be the next Westbert or Knox or whatever, right? And
Yeah.
then you get to sit next to one of these people who just like outshines anything on this like real craftsman level. And then when he's done for the day, he's just like, all right, gotta go home and take care of the kids. And you're like, what? How is this? Like, I didn't expect this to be my hero, but this is my hero right here, And I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm again, I think it's the engineering side. Like I see
Yeah.
an incredibly optimized machine of a man, and I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, hail the fur,
Yeah.
But so like that felt like a bit of a sort of maneuvering rock for me.
And it
Like
gives you
I
more
felt like that was
perspective on the real life as
yes.
well, right? How real legends work. Because if you don't meet the person, you have all the projections like, he's like this, he's like that, and actually you just meeting a person, hey, he's just a pretty cool chill dude and
Yeah.
stuff like
Oh, that
that.
was incredible too. I for whatever reason, like this might be like this is gonna betray my Norwegian ignorance of the world, but like before I met him, I assumed Ruangia was
Yeah.
gonna be this like I don't know why I had like Master Miyagi in my head, but I kind of had like that because he's painting.
This is so funny as an Asian.
I
All right.
know, and it's slightly racist, and I do realize that.
No,
I
it's
apologize,
all right.
but,
It's
like,
all right. It's all right.
But like
For Asian, I
his
approve.
paintings are
Asian approve. That's
because
really
he's like
funny.
his paintings are so meditative and they're so like masterful, and it's always so like even it's like silly cat girls and shit. He's thought about like how the brackets of the thing on the head has worked, and so I meet him and he's just this like he doesn't look older than me at all. I think he's like 10 years older than me or whatever, but he's like
Asian blood.
he's
Is
just
that Asian blood?
well he is like he'll just like you should see sketchbooks. They are the definition of
I saw
figuring
it.
shit out. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Everything's just like straight cross hatching and barely a goddamn line, and it's just like,
Yeah.
oh no, I'm just figuring out how combat vests hang on a what?
Yeah.
Who thinks like that? That's amazing.
Yeah.
Right? But so all this like explosion of enthusiasm is to say like I got into Volta and suddenly like my entire sort of basis of what makes a good artist got turned upside down. Because it was this thing of sure, it's about making good pictures, but it's far beyond that. It's this curiosity thing that we started out by talking about. This like willful curiosity, this thing of like forcing yourself to think and know that like anything in the world can be really fascinating as long as you know, as long as you figure it out, it's gonna be fucking amazing. And that's I think the big thing. And that always comes back to like boosts me whenever I'm in a dark place. is this thing of like, you found the one thing in the world that allows you to never be bored again. Let's just not be bored. You'll feel better, and then just go find something to just look at for a protracted amount of time
It's
and
just
be fascinated.
passion
It's great.
and your love for the craft just course correct you, right? Can I say that? Is that correct?
I think you can say it, and I think it's true, but I think it's useless for a poor art student in a dark place because they don't know if they have passion. I still don't know if I have a goddamn passion. I don't trust that word. I don't trust inspiration.
how
I
about
think
love?
these.
You like it enough to push through,
I think I'm grateful enough to it as a thing, because art shouldn't be this lucrative. Art, I mean, it should, of course, it's
you're getting
fantastic,
paid
right?
too much, right?
I mean, sometimes, but no, I mean more like if you look at art as a history, right? Up
Mm.
until about 150 years ago, at the max, there was no art market. Like you were individually commissioned by people to do like
Mm-hmm.
churches and shit. That
Wealthy
was
people.
pretty much it. Yeah, exactly. So you had either had to deal with like dickish royalty or dickish religious people, and
Yeah.
both of them were trying to fuck you. So
Yeah, exactly. You heard of the story
right,
like Michelangelo had to hide because he's too
oh,
good. Because back in the day, even though like you're that good and you people know you're that good, you need to hide. Like
yeah.
that's kind of shit. Like yeah.
I mean, Da Vinci partially had to flee Italy and live in the French court for like 20 years because like this is a conspiracy, but like whether or not like
Yeah.
people were essentially paid a bounty to like, hey, see off this like northern Italian cunt so we in the southerners can like get a hand in the game, and you're like, wow, okay,
Yeah.
that's pretty fucking bleak. And like when they used his like his public statues for like gun practice and shit just to
Wow.
piss him off. It's like that's throwing art shade in a whole new way. but so like what I yeah, no, when I'm in like in a place where if I'm getting stressed out about something, or if I'm
Yep.
like, if you have those like, once a year things where you're like, oh my god, the entire games
It
industry is
doesn't
going to
work.
collapse, and there's
Yeah,
never
it's
going
a
to be any more work.
mistake.
And then you kind of, if you I think, history is something that saves me a lot. So going back and just looking at that, like, no, we're living in like the golden age of golden ages of artists. And my personal prediction, it's probably just me being a fucking art hippie again, but is the future is going to see more of this, because there's this Heinlein quote that the future is going to be full of people entertaining each other, and
Mhm.
I think that's true in a very positive way. I'm thinking like
Agree.
that means Gene.
I agree.
Yeah, and then Gene Roddenberry, the guy who wrote like Star Trek back in the day.
Oh, okay. The Star
Yeah,
Trek
like
writer.
yeah. I mean, he was the guy who like invented the original series and stuff. And like, like it or not, that's not really the
Or
point. But that
like
guy
the
was the most.
pilot, the guy who wrote the pilot.
No, he wrote the entire like original series.
I see. But just a little bit
Yeah.
off topic. Have you seen the
Yeah.
pilot episode for Star Trek?
No.
I think he wrote it. It was insane. Like
Oh shit.
yeah,
I'm not.
you could check it out.
Gotta Google this.
Yeah, because my one of my friends he make movies. He's a director, and one of the things he liked most is the first pilot episode of Star Trek. It's insane. So much stuff he packed into like half an hour. It's like a Rick and Morty episode for
Oh yay.
not yeah, not a perfect
Oh,
description. Yeah,
I'm looking forward to seeing that.
yeah.
Um, but Gene Roddenberry, like yeah, like when you look at like his writings and Star Trek in general, it's weird, right? Because I was once on the other side of this, so I'm gonna just like take a little detour. There is, the obvious like dichotomy between Star
I
Trek and
love it.
Star Wars, right? Right. And Star Wars people are like, Star Trek people are fucking nerds, and Star Trek people are like, Star Wars people
Star
are
War
fucking
people,
superficial. Yeah,
fucking
exactly. They don't know
Jabba.
what the fucking and like yeah, but like like there's passion and there's love and there's all these things on each side of that divide. But what I'm like, having been on one side and now kind of having at least a foot in each camp and probably leaning more
Yeah,
to the
do you
Star
need to
Trek side.
choose? Do you need to choose sides? I
I
like both,
don't
man.
know. You
Oh,
don't,
really?
but you have to realize that they're just not the same thing. I mean, I also like
Yes.
Lord of the Rings, and
Yeah.
I think Star Trek and Star Wars are as different as Star Wars and Lord of the Rings. These things have nothing to do with each other other than the fact that they're fiction. Because Star Trek is amazing. Star Trek is not in a galaxy far, far away. Star Trek is the statement that like, hey, nuclear war Soviet American
Yes.
like displeasure, all
They
this shit.
just
Like it's gonna
translated
be
into a space environment, like modern day problems.
no.
No?
Well, not quite.
Not
Right, like
quite.
because he's recognizing that there's always going to be differences between people who have different points of view. That's never going to not be a thing. But he's saying like everything that's happening on Earth right now that seems insoluble, fuck it, it's going to be fine, right? We're going to figure that out.
Mhm.
Then we're going to go to space and we're going to make a space fleet and we're going to explore space without being conquerors. We're going to become a people who value investigation and curiosity over violence and power. And that shit is the most like ridiculously optimistic thing I've ever seen. It's outrageous. It is so goddamn bold. Like this is
Yeah.
some like RuPaul Drag Race level bold shit. Like that is beyond, and I love that because he is the only one who fucking does it, other than like Terry
Exploration.
Pratchett, who's exploration, but also just like the courage that goes into not being powerful, and
Mhm.
and just like the
So
sheer
admit,
optimism of his
although we
mission,
are vulnerable, we're gonna explore,
right?
right?
Exactly, right? This thing of like power and vulnerability. He did fucking 60 years ago. He was
Yeah.
so ahead of the curve. And
Ahead of
that's
the
where I'm
curve.
like,
What's a
yeah,
pilot, man?
that's
Like later, what's a pilot?
oh,
It's insane.
will
Yeah.
do. But yeah, no, so like, but shit like that gets me up, you know, like knowing
Yeah.
that there was a Gene Roddenberry back in the day, and not to go
Yeah.
off on genes, but like Gene Wolfe too. If you read him, his like he
Uh,
wrote like the shadow of the torture and stuff, which
yeah.
is exactly the opposite, right? He writes stories about like future of the world that seem so alien and dark that they come off as like fantasy stories, and then when you read it, you're like, oh no, this is a science fiction story, and it's
Mm-hmm.
super dark because the world has fallen into shadow and shit, but everything's like scientifically traced and everything underscored by these like core human values. It's just like everything's fucking dark all the time. But and he plays with like unreliable narratives. But like stuff like that gives me hope because I'm like, that is reflecting a nuanced view of history. That is understanding that behind every storm cloud there is a goddamn fireball waiting for us to get over ourselves.
And it
And
stands out too, right? It's so it
yeah,
just stand out from the crowd so much. And
yes, because
it's
there's no like dark lord
such
and
a bold message.
exactly this thing
Yeah.
of like, you know what, essentially speaks to one of the oldest pieces of wisdom we have, which is like the Ring of Quresh from like Iranian mythology, which is this king who, you know, he was a wise king and an old king, and he had seen so many plagues and things come through his lands, plagues and wars and everything, and he was brokenhearted because he knew the suffering of his people, and so his master smith makes him a ring, that a magic ring, he says, that will cure all your ills and see your wisdom pass into the future. And it's a simple golden band, and on the inside, it just says, "This too shall pass." And the magic of the ring is that it will take away your darkest darks and your lightest lights, right? So
Mhm.
you'll never be lost in the euphoria of happiness, and you'll never be lost in the depression of sadness. It's always going to bring you back to the middle ground because you know this too shall pass. And
Yeah.
that, like, I want
No
to see
matter
more of
good or
that.
bad,
I want
right?
to exactly. I guess it's a Norwegian thing, and I guess it's like an engineer thing. But I just love level-headedness. I mean, not dispassion, but just the thing of like not yeah, you know.
Yeah.
I just I
And
can't.
it's
If I
fascinating.
have to
It's
deal with
actually
another
a
Dark
tool
Lord,
to
I'm gonna
teach you to
split.
be in a certain mindset, right?
Hmm.
Like the ring for that example. It just
Exactly.
teaches
I
you to
think it's
be
it's
to think, right?
yeah. I think it's about like trying to break our reliance on our monkey brain, because that's what I mean. You know, essentially, like we're fancy monkeys
It
with shoes and
I think it
overpowered
solves some
adrenaline
problem
glands.
too. Like you know that the
Hmm.
self-doubt, which goes back into depression, our topic, it gives you an
Yes.
object where you that you could rely on instead of yourself, right? When you're depressed, you're
Yeah.
doubting yourself. And when you're given an object and you've been told that you don't doubt like this object could help you. And when you
Hmm.
have like it's like leveraging. Like with the help of that object, you're able to achieve that mindset, right?
Yeah.
That-
Yeah, and I think like to break that down into its like simple non-jargonic way of talking, it's just the universe abhors stillness. Nothing ever sits still. Like no matter how meditative and still you sit on the earth, you are still sitting on a spinning fireball that has a thin crust of bacteria and things on it that just so happen to produce you. You're spinning around a fireball at 50,000 miles an hour, which itself is shooting through the outer courses of another goddamn gravitational spin. And you just like, when you start realizing how precarious it all is, it's like that can be really overwhelming. And I remember like first time we had like astrophysics in school, and I was like, oh, because first you see like a model of the Earth and the moon, and you're like, oh, that's pretty cool. And then you see like the solar system, like, oh, that's pretty cool. And you see the solar system moving through, and you see like everything spinning around that, and you're like, oh my god.
Was it hard for you to settle down for art only? It seems like you like everything, right?
No, I mean, because I don't like, I love everything. I mean, knowledge is just fun. I love not being confused, you know, like, and I think like Socrates, that is right. It was either Socrates or Aristotle, but that thing of like, we know more and more. We know more and more about less and less, you know, like of the amount of knowledge that we have today versus yesterday. It's exponential. We just know more and more and more. But comparative to the overall amount of knowledge we know is out there at that point, we know that we know less and less. So the only thing you can know is how little you know in the end, right?
Yes.
That's that
this explains perfectly why you love Star Trek. It's exactly the same
man.
thing.
Because that I think what we all search for, right, in life is
exploration, expansion, right?
I think like something of that sort. I think it's nobility, right?
All right.
And not in like the sort of.
Are you into spiritual stuff?
No, not at
spiritual.
all. That shit comes out of like the 1930s for the most part, and I do not trust anyone who thinks like anyone who says they're a spiritual person. I'm like, but how are you psychologically? Because you know, like anything that's measurable, I'm down for. But if you're like, you know, I feel this thing, I'm like, but we feel things all of the time.
Could the both merge? Are you open to the possibility that they could merge at some point? Because every bubble of knowledge is expanding, right? If both of them are expanding, it has to cross path in certain terms if they're both the truth. Do you know what I mean?
Well, okay, so that's an interesting. I think yes.
I'm not dissing you at any point, but I'm just
no. I'm not taking it as such.
Okay,
But what I'm thinking is
because what I understand is like everyone's trying to live to their fullest, right? I want to be the most Dino of all. You want to be the most Evan of all, like another Rick and Morty reference. But like you want to be the most Evan out of all of the Evans, right? Because you want to be the most curious. You want to understand like all the interesting infos about things. So everyone's doing their best to expand themselves. So that is I learned it from spirituality, but to be frank, but I think it's a great concept. And it fits you at this point, I think.
Up until a point, but then we have to talk about like the cancer in the room, which is ambition, right? Because we tend to talk about ambition as this sort of non-critically attained thing that's just like, it's positive, it gets you places. And I'm like, but like Stalin was real motivated, you know, like there's a lot of people out there who could have done with a little bit less motivation or ambition, you know, and not to say that people should, you know, just be couch potatoes, but again, like part of this mental health thing is to be okay with not being okay. Part of this is being okay with sitting the fuck down and having a moment. And I think a lot of people don't allow themselves that because of this, like the hustle mindset, this idea that like, I gotta be out there, I gotta get stuff done. And like, I just had my first proper vacation where like I put down the pen for like multiple days in a stretch for like 4 years this
How does it
past
feel?
week. Oh my God, it feels amazing. I mean, we're in quarantine lockdown right now because we had a New Year's party and and it was all within the rules, but then one of us
of course everyone obey the rules.
Yeah, right.
Yep.
Yeah, we're good up here, but you know, like in spite of that, I'm just everything so relaxed. I feel real good. It's nice. So I would say that like people need to. I think that just to kind of skip ahead, we'll come back to it. But like that thing of like, what would you tell your younger self?
Yeah. All right. So I'll tell everyone. So there's this question that I'm gonna ask is, if you're able to travel back in time, to give advice to your past self in your darkest depressed state, what would you tell him?
Yeah, I'd say like learn to slow the fuck down. Like, I think one of the things we take for granted right now, and that is
the hustle culture again. It's that hustle thing, right?
Yeah, this thing of like you don't have time. Things have to go now.
You only live once, right? You only live once. You better master
Right.
concept about today. Like, because it's so competitive. It's so competitive, right? Your only chance to make it is to master it today, and you're just hammering yourself. I was in that situation. I'm like, should I give up? Like, is it a talent issue? I'm working this hard. Like, things just isn't working out. Yeah, I experienced that.
And so like fucking like going for the nape of that goddamn myth, I think would be good. I think also if I could dispel like the mythology of like talent to myself, I would probably also have a lot less like panicky moments of like maybe I'm just not chosen for this. I just read Harry Potter again and god damn it, talent seems to be everything. How can I exist? You know, and then at some point you just realize that, oh wait, that's just a book. And also no one was born to draw because there's no evolutionary or biological advantage to be able to draw, right? Like not directly enough for there to be an evolutionary advantage.
Yeah, they won't
for
get us
your
on the
brain to be
spaceship
able to
when it's apocalypse. Artists,
no.
Artists is okay. We don't need them. They're at the back of the line. We get a physicist. We get a biology master, things like that. The artists could wait. That's us, right?
Not quite that apocalyptic.
Yeah.
I was thinking more like, you know, like Usain Bolt has some crazy muscle fibers in his legs, and this clearly is.
Yeah.
And like it's not just that he's been running all his life, though. Of course, the dude is amazing just as an athlete, but you can see it, and like, you know, top athletes tend to have a particular physical disposition that is the result of a lot of training, obviously, but also a lot of them, you know, tend to find in a young age that their body has certain traits, right?
Yeah.
But apart from hands and eyes and
are good at sport as well. That's just a fact,
yes.
right?
Right. Yeah. So then we're talking evolutionary biology. We're talking traits that
probably
been passed down.
I think art could be passed down. I
think so. See, like,
yeah, I think so.
I think so
all the time. Because if you have raised animals, I raised a baby cat which has never seen birds before. When he heard the bird, he knows exactly how to react, how to hunt down the bird. So, for example, if your ancestors are really good at art or pictorial things, I feel I'm not surprised that the sum of it that you could get from just DNA, because we are underestimating the power of DNA. Like more and more research is done. Actually, there's actual memory in it, because so it's possible that the.
But what does that mean, that there's actual memory in it? Like it's not the memory of someone sitting down and eating a potato. Like when we're talking about genetic memory, we're talking about what you just explained with the cat. Our cats are exactly the same way. We never taught them to go after a bird.
Yeah.
But that's a hunting instinct, right? And so you have entire parts of your brain dedicated to these kinds of reflexes. Like in our brain, for example, the entire part of the brain that's built around the adrenal gland is made for our flight response, right? Yes. But so these are very basic survival mechanisms that have a very basic input and very basic output, right? But art is quite different because it plays on the intellectual level. And I'm not saying that there isn't aspects or elements of this that could tangentially be passed down, but an evolutionary line comes from a particular advantage that allows one generation to survive into the next. And I mean, yes, you could have like you could have really sort of bred in lines of like shaman who did like, you know, cave paintings back in the day.
Not
and then
even
that was
to
like,
the shaman,
but that's
like,
not
because to play devil's advocate, like for architect, for example, you need to know how to build a steady stone house. So I think that's what for me, that's what solid composition comes from. We like bold shapes, we like strong shapes, triangles, squares. So those architects actually are able to survive, to pass through the gene of good architecture to survive.
Let's see, but you're conflating two things here. You're conflating the amassed knowledge is one thing, right? But no one is born and then they're raised like our cats, but without knowledge of architecture. and then go like, yeah, no, I know, I know how a skyscraper is to be built, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
because this is abstract knowledge, and so we have accumulated sets of knowledge that we are able to pass down. But if you took all of like the base knowledge that goes into building a skyscraper, for example,
Yeah.
anyone could learn this. It is not genetic. It's the same. I would argue it's the same with art, because we don't have, there's no one thing that is or isn't art. We have more or less, as culture now, agreed that art could be, or anything could be art. That doesn't mean art is anything, right? So like you could pull a Duchamp, right, and make take a fucking urinal and sign it, and like if it's in the right context and if it's a clever enough comeback to some sort of statement, it's like, fuck yeah, that is clever as shit, right? Because what you're doing is essentially granting out the person an immediate experience that you've had over time. It's kind of like a stand-up joke, right? If you watch a really good stand-up comic,
Yeah.
they'll grant you knowledge in a punchline. It's fucking crazy, right? That's art,
That
but
is
that
art.
demands clarity. It demands philosophy. It demands hard work, and it demands craftsmanship. None of that is genetic, right? Both my parents can draw fairly well. I could outdraw the fuck out of both of them. But I don't think I was granted. I mean, because I love having this argument with my dad, because he's very much on your side of this. He's like, oh no, there's definitely like a thing being passed down. I'm like, yeah, my grandma painted, you did some drawing, but I didn't learn any of that from you, and I don't draw like you, and we don't express ourselves in the same way. So how on earth, when you take art and break it down to its core component, could you argue that this is a passing down genetically of art? It just so happens that my grandma was a depressive who used art as an outlet. It just so happens that my dad was an architect fanboy who became an engineer for practical reasons and kept on drawing because he loved it. It just so happens that I had an easy time passing into art because I was in a
The
situation where both of my
environment,
parents.
right? The environment help you.
Exactly. So like
Yeah, I
I'm
could
when it
agree on
comes
that.
to
Yeah.
nature nurture arguments, I think this kind of feeds into like that talk about, or talk
Actually,
about like the word talent.
thinking about it, my point can't be proved without a
No,
insane experiment involving billions.
but I think I don't think there's something. I mean, because I think your thoughts, I think your conclusion is more or less correct, right? But if you just exchange sort of genetic memory for accumulated knowledge, that is essentially what culture is. So it's a grand victory for culture
For everyone,
that
right?
art. Yeah, exactly. Like the fact that art is where it is today compared to 100 years ago, or 200 years ago,
Yeah,
or
yeah,
fucking
definitely
500 years
way
ago,
better. Yes, yes.
because it's everyone's now, because we've remembered this thing from the cave paintings of like art, you know. This is fantastic. There was the small tangent, but just to make a larger point, there's a cave in France where they found these like stone paintings of wildebeest or gazelles or some shit, and they looked like they had been scratched. So people just assumed that, oh, this has been like, there's been people in here like scratching this shit up and like ruining it. And they thought this for like 10 years. And then one night when the archaeologists were in there and like, you know, figuring stuff out and like checking out new parts of the cave and stuff, the lights went out, the batteries went out, so they had to like light a candle. And then they realized what the scratches were, right? The scratches, once the light moved from side to side and flickered, acted exactly like the waving of grass around the animals. And these animals also looked like they'd been painted with multiple heads, but because of the angle of the light, only one part of the head was illuminated at a time. So it looked like, if you move the flame, it looked like beasts moving and grass moving. So literally, what they were doing was going into dark places and watching movies. Like nothing ever changes. We're all the same. But it's for everyone. That's the point, right? This is literally an artist taking an experience through a craft and granting it to other people as an extrasensory experience. That's amazing, right? And
It's
that's
crazy.
exactly what art should be. It should
Yeah,
be that we all recognize that
experience that
you and me and
we could all enjoy.
exactly. And it's so simple when you, I mean, imagine that instead of humans, we were all just like chimps. And imagine what chimps would be doing, and money was bananas, right? Like if we looked at this and we thought, oh, it's a healthy colony of chimps, it would be everyone has a fucking banana and gets to watch the stone movies, right? That's it. That's what. But when humans do it, we're like, oh yeah, one has like 60 billion bananas and some of them starve to death. but we still watch the movies.
We'll still make a movie out of it.
But if you look at like art as part of society over the last couple hundred years, I think it's moving in the right direction. You get a lot of people going like, oh, fucking people, modern art, whatever. Like, no, fuck off.
No,
like,
without a
modern art
doubt,
is an
it's the
expression,
best
and that's
age for time, for art. Without a doubt, yeah, I agree.
So to bring it back to the original question,
Yeah,
that shit gets me out of the depressions. That thing of like, in spite of what a lot of people cry about, we're in the best timeline right now. I mean,
yes.
yeah, there's a plague. Yes, yeah, there's a plague going
Yeah,
on. And
but still, we have the internet. Like, it's crazy. I'm talking
and
with you. I'm in Hong Kong.
yeah, and that's
You're in Norway.
and that's amazing.
Yeah, that's
And
crazy.
think about this in terms of plagues, right? We did this like 100 years ago, right? And
Yeah.
there's a little questionnaire I give people, just especially people who get like stressed out about COVID. Like, last time we had a COVID thingy was in 1919, right? Year after World War I.
Mm-hmm.
During World War I, about 100 million people died in that war.
Yeah.
Can you guess how many people died in 1919? Of what we call the Spanish flu, which was also like a COVID-like disease.
More than the war.
200,
I remember.
200 million people, twice as many people in
Yes.
1 year.
Yes. Yeah, that's what I
as in
remember.
4 years of war. And I'm just saying, like if you want to look at how much better the world is right now than 100 years ago, motherfucker, like, yeah, we lost some people, sure, but not 200 million. And also, like,
Yeah, that's great. Bringing the truth to people as well. Like, some of my friends are, I wish I was like, in older times. I'm like, no, you don't. I'm just like you. Like, you don't even have a freaking warm water in winter. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like,
why? And just think about it, like typhoid and impetigo and like fucking crazy diseases that would have destroyed you.
Too much people taking for granted. Yes.
Yeah, man. Like, just antibiotics. Think about that shit.
Yeah. All right.
I love antibiotics.
just suddenly throwing it out there. I love it.
Oh, I mean, I really do. Just modern medicine. I mean, again, look at how quickly they. We were able. They, the fucking medical geniuses out there, were able to just take.
Not the artist. The artist is at the end of the line.
We kept everybody happy with our pictures.
Yeah. Look at the pictures while you're waiting for the soft, while you're waiting for the antibiotics, right? Look at this movie we made, right?
But there's so much to be optimistic about. I can't even begin. Like, just the fact that there's there's a non-socialist anti-work movement in America right now. Have you an idea how insane that is as a proposition? Again, that's taking a historical perspective of it. But up until now, socialism's been the only active sort of challenger to capitalism in America. And I'm not saying that's a huge movement yet, but the fact that like people who have not taken a political stance on it, but just saying, hey, work as a cultural behemoth in America right now is poisonous, and we need to like fucking change that culture. Like, that's huge. The fact that Americans are saying no to a thing that they invented, the hustle culture, it's like people fear that they're seeing the end of the American empire or whatever.
It shows America is a free country. That's what I see.
Yeah, and
nothing like this.
And it's
yeah,
and it's just that people are actually like doing that. It dispels pretty much any fear I have of that country as an institution. Because people kind of like to think of, like, oh, America's in trouble now. There used to be like these halcyon days of perfect republic. And like, have you read any amount of American history? They killed each other for like years. They enslaved one another. This is golden right now.
Yeah.
Trump as like Mussolini. It's like, do you remember what happened to Mussolini? And also, Trump is no Mussolini. Like, Trump does not have a black garbed guard of people with daggers going around stabbing his political opponents, even though he did his fucking best. But I'm just saying, like, if this is
imagine back in the day, right? Even the governments, they have to fight themselves. Like around like World War II and stuff. Like every like a president, they have to go down to the field and shoot guns like Lincoln. Which actually like fucking needs to lead people to war. Like, think about that. That's insane.
Yeah, he came down to Savannah and sat there and watched them.
I always think about it. Like, if you make a game out of that, that would be a kick-ass game. Like, based on history and stuff like that. Like, you play Lincoln. Wow.
Yeah, or just you get you or you oh, that would be fucking fantastic. You
Yeah,
like you
right?
just choose a period in history and you just
Yeah.
choose yourself a character.
Yeah.
Kind of like Crusader Kings or whatever, but you just have control over everything and you can just like try your
Yeah.
best. Just call it leader and just see like how well would you do, motherfucker?
Yeah. Yeah. How
Oh,
good are you back in the times?
yeah.
Yeah, and they can make it like sandbox and
Oops.
shit, like
Yeah.
free stuff like GTA style. Oh, that's a great game.
Yeah, and you could like you could make like difficulty ratings on like how
How realistic
complex
you
the
want
way
it
you
to
die.
be, right?
Exactly, right. So like really hard. It's like, oops, you died of diarrhea.
Yeah.
Too bad for
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. President assassination. Hey, you didn't dodge it quick enough.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. Or
Uh,
or like you get to choose like quick time events, like which person is gonna assassinate you? Like this woman
yeah.
holding a basket or this kid and stuff like that. And
And then it
the
is the
woman
kid
just
with the
pulls a
puppy.
gun out of the basket and stuff like that. Yeah, that would be fun. All
uh,
right, back
all
on
right.
track. So
Yes, yes.
3 practical steps for you to get through a negative state if you have one.
Mm,
It could be like really physical stuff. For me, just sharing my techniques. I'll just hold my fist really tight and then let go, imagining like all the stress I get from drawing, and then okay, I could feel all the negative stuff I want, but I'll just let go of it
mhm.
like in 3 seconds. So like these kind of things, does it resonate with you? Do you have some similar practice?
Yeah, kind of. Like I go for walks. Like just getting out of whatever
Just
physical
freaking
situation I'm
walk, right?
in. Yeah, just because like my brain goes in weird places and stuff. But if I'm out walking and I don't like no music, I'll wear the headphones with like noise canceling, just like to not get annoyed, and then just walk until I'm not stressed anymore. Usually works because you start walking, you lose your kind of like you kind of start breaking out of that like fucking loop that you're probably stuck in. And once you're out of the loop, you can start seeing things from like different perspectives, and that helps a lot. And you get away from your screens, you get away from like your fucking messages,
Yeah.
and you just exist for a bit. I think that helps me a lot.
Does it need to be in
Number two
nature?
is
I imagine like
no, not at all.
not at all, even
Cities are great,
urban areas.
dude. Yeah, like sometimes all you need is a good barista, like someone who excitedly makes you a lovely cappuccino. That
Yeah.
is
And passionately
that is
explain how he crafted it.
oh, when they
Yeah, I
talk
know,
about
man.
beans and shit, and you're just like, I don't
Yeah.
care about beans, but you do, and I
You
care
made it
that you
so
care.
interesting and stuff like that.
Exactly, right? There's a wonderful wine bar down here. I try to not go there
Too
very
much?
often. It's quite it's pricey, but
Tempting.
when you do, and they kind of like they stir your heart with anecdotes of like how these grapes come from like the side of this goddamn volcano in South America, and
Yeah.
you're
Can
like,
you taste the volcano and stuff
whoa,
like that?
yeah, exactly. And it's like I don't know if I can. I don't know if you're just bullshitting me,
It's like
but
imagine and stuff like that. It's kind of
yeah,
like the ring story, right? What you told me.
yeah,
Like it's how
but
you
but
yeah, go ahead.
no, but it is that thing of like whether or not he is full of shit. It's like this is the shit. Like it's good first and foremost. Like everything they serve you is delicious, and he obviously knows what he's talking about. Like if he doesn't know anything about the background of how the wines were made,
Yeah,
he
even
knows what they taste like.
at
So
that
it's just like
point the
he can
truth
tell
is
me
not
things.
relevant. It's what he's doing and what emotion he's inviting you to feel. Like
Yeah,
I know it's
exactly.
important to check if things are true, but at that
Hmm.
point I think in a artistic way the truth is not relevant anymore.
It's an experience at that point. You don't. I'm not going there to learn about wine. I'm not. I'm going there to have a wine experience. And if
Exactly.
that wine experience,
Exactly.
if I have that wine experience, and then someone's like shows me that that was a bullshit wine experience, of course that's gonna sour it in hindsight. But that's not really why I'm going there. I'm going there because right here, right now, isn't doing it for me, and I
It,
need to
is this
just reset or do something else.
is this step 2 alcohol? Is alcohol step 2?
No, not alcohol, not distraction, but sort of what would you call it? Um,
Just step away for a while. Is that it?
yeah, realignment. I think this thing of
Realignment.
you sometimes, especially if you're like connected to the internet, you get pulled in a million different directions, I don't do Twitter. And only times I post on Twitter is through like when I start up a stream. I don't do Facebook. I have the Messenger, but I don't go on Facebook.
Same.
I don't. I mean,
I
I don't
try
really
to
do
use
social media
as less
anymore.
as possible.
Yeah. So like, but I've been desensitized to like the power of messages a little bit. So like, I check emails like once a day, and that is like, I check them for like half an hour, and then I have to have like a half an hour just like calming down because I'm like, other people.
Yeah.
Or just like, oh my God, there's a business side to things. But so like that kind of thing takes a
The
back seat
stress
a little
off of
bit.
it, right?
Yeah. So that thing
Realignment.
of like, yeah, realigning. I don't know if that is perfectly or, but that thing of like taking all of the disparate parts of your attention and kind of pulling them back in and being like, okay, touch base. Let's see how we feel. What do we need
Yeah.
today?
How are we doing today?
Sometimes that's working out. Sometimes that is going to have a glass of wine or a lovely cappuccino. Sometimes that's just going for like a 4-hour walk. Sometimes that's talking to friends. And that I think is really fucking like, that's the most difficult thing sometimes, especially if you've been in like a good work mode and in a good sort of little encapsulated mood. And then you're lonely. And not in sort of like, oh, I'm so lonesome, but that thing of like, I haven't spoken to my best friends for like 4 days. I should do that. It's not that thing of like, oh, I got to catch up and I got to, it does not have to be. It's just that you're a
Just
monkey.
being sane as a social monkey, because we need
Yes,
to socialize. It's just feeding that
yes,
that thing, that
exactly,
monkey a cookie, because it
exactly.
needs a cookie once in a while. That socializing
Yeah,
cookie. So you give him the
exactly.
socializing
And
cookie.
then realizing that whatever part of the brain starts thinking as you're talking to these people is a very legitimate part of your brain that you are letting atrophy when you're just using. I mean, for example, when I'm drawing for the most part, I use the analytical part of my brain, which also happens to be the most cynical part of my brain. Which means if I draw a lot, my drawings tend to kind of become. I noticed like at the beginning and the end, like I'll start out more expressive, I end up more analytical. And I'll start up more kind of exploratory and end up much more sort of like carving things down to their absolute shape and shit. And I think because I start doing it to achieve something, and I end up doing something that's just for me. And I think that's just what that part of my brain wants. But then if I'm hanging out with friends and then I'm drawing to explain, I'm drawing to show, and suddenly it's a very different emphasis. Suddenly, like I don't give a shit about details, and suddenly I don't give a shit about like clean lines and stuff. I give a shit about like, is this making them excited? Is
Yeah,
this
is
cool?
that
Is it
urge
interesting?
to communicate and perform, right? It's like your cave paintings.
Yes.
Like imagine back in the day,
Yeah.
like, hell yeah, I invented something. It could be a movie. Like, look at this. Like
Yeah.
the freaking cows are moving and shit. Like everyone's like, ooh, 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 like that.
I think again, like one thing to note on for any future art teachers is just teach isms by all means, but make for God's sake the point that nobody knew there was an ism at the time.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I think the fact that
That is very important. No
yeah,
one's
because I
gonna
think
like
we
this is gonna
teach.
be an ism, yo. Like no one's gonna
Yeah.
be like
Well,
that. No one
other
was
than
like
like
that.
Picasso, who
All
was
right.
just like, yeah, it's gonna be a Picassoism
Yeah.
because of Picasso.
It's different. Yeah.
Yeah.
Get me on the
He's a
spaceship.
mask,
I'm
so
Picasso. He's gonna
yeah,
be that guy. Like someone tell
yeah,
Picasso
yeah.
to stay at back of the line. He's an artist, and he's gonna say something. All right. Is there a third one, or are we happy with two?
No, I think, well,
It's
I
totally
was gonna
fine
say
if
working out, but that's kind of the same thing again. It's this thing of like just like changing it up. But working out is
no.
important,
I
and it
think
doesn't have to.
it's relevant because a lot of like
Yeah.
for me like I started to write blogs to help myself, and I always emphasis on artists working out, especially for we Asians, like our little race. We have a very weak risk if we don't work out often. We and
Hmm.
the diet. I actually solved this thing out because eating eggs apparently will help to prevent you from getting carpal tunnel,
Oh,
vitamin D from eggs. So
nice.
yeah, so actually, it's really important if you want to do this for life.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. And just in general, like you hear this kind of dispassionately passed around a bit, but like, oh, you got to take care of yourself. Got to take care of. Like you don't have a body. you are a body, right? Like this,
Yeah,
you're not a
people
brain.
need to hear this.
Yeah,
Artists need to hear this. Like, I just need to draw.
yeah.
That's why should I work out and stuff like that.
Because yeah, exactly. Because you're not a drawing machine. You are a monkey, and
Yeah.
your monkey needs things. And like
Yeah.
again, I
Yeah.
feel like this is what physical education in school should be about. Not like how quickly can you do the
Lesson
10-minute
one.
mile or
We
whatever.
are all monkeys.
Just like every day, go for a walk, for fuck's sake. Like
Yeah.
that's because it doesn't have to be
Socialize.
CrossFit.
All right, the next 5 minutes, socialize, people.
Yeah,
Socialize.
and just if nothing else, just sit in a circle and go.
Yeah. Even that,
Like just
that will be
something.
fun. Like prevent, like you can't speak any language. All you're allowed to do is sounds. Try to express yourself with your tonality and stuff like that. 5 minutes, like yell to each other. That is
Exactly
amazing. That's gonna be super healthy.
But like like little things, you'd be surprised. Like I'm not an expert on depression.
None of our like no, we're just.
I feel like I'm surrounded by experts on depression, and I feel like the one idiot who just can't get it. Because like, so a friend of mine, Chris Bjors, who
you're just so
he's
technical, man. Like you're always looking for solutions. Like once you identify it, you're like, yes, I'm in this condition. How do my mechanical mind solve this? I could do this, I could do that. Like you're just like a machine in some sort of, in that sense.
That is ultimately what we are, right? Like the more we learn, the more we figure out.
You're clear about it. You're how, I don't know, is it the correct description? But you're so you detach yourself from that emotional state. I don't think that's everyone could do that at that moment, at least.
No, I don't think I can either all the time. But so like sometimes you have to talk about these things in hindsight as an analysis and not like, because sometimes in the moment you just like running around.
But when does it kick in? Like after the few stages, like you feel anger and then you feel depressed and then you feel, hey maybe it's a problem I could solve.
So that's an interesting one, because that's an ongoing thing. From when I was like a kid, I was very I wasn't angry as a kid, but I was easy to rile up, let's say, and I think it was like kind of, but I think it was just more like that was how I got a reaction from people, because that thing of like my sister would rile me up, and then I would be like, oh, and then I would run after her, and she would run in front of me, and there would be like laughter and things. So it was more because that was funny, and I was like, fuck it, like I'll play into it. That's funny. And I think I obviously like I experienced some emotions in that, but I don't have that clear.
You're like, I'm not a machine. Come on.
Yeah, you can't just push a button.
I can cut myself right now to show you.
No, but so like, but in so doing, I was never like I never felt bad about anger, right? Or about like, my mom and dad really didn't do like the whole shame thing, because they both grew up Christian, so they were like, we're a little too familiar with that one. We're just not gonna do that. And so we got to be pretty weird when I was a kid. Not like fucking crazy weird, but like it took me to like high school to find like proper friends, because I didn't like, I had tons of like not proper school friends. I had lots of like other family friends and stuff, right?
Yeah.
But in school, I just like I had a couple of friends, but I didn't have a friend group. I didn't really fit in that way. Just because I was a weird kid and I was just not really that interested. My mom loves this little story where, because my mom like really wanted me to have a friend group, and so she was really touched when I got into when I was in high school, and like I found my gang of friends. But up until that point, my mom still does this. She tries to like push me in the direction she thinks is right, and that's lovely. And it feels, you feel so loved when you catch yourself being annoyed someone's doing something lovely for you.
Yeah.
So like whenever I moved to a new city, for example, my mom would she would not really like thinking about it, she would go on the website of the local university and see if they had any good math classes. Not because I needed math classes, but because my mom would just have, my mom is an engineer, and so she's solution oriented, and so she was like, hey, if this art stuff shouldn't work out, we never know if it's not going to work out. Get some math classes. It's good to have math classes. It's good to have options.
Just to be safe, just your art stuff. If it doesn't work out, You could still do math.
Exactly. In the beginning, I was like, how could she be so non-supportive, you know? And like,
Yeah.
don't you believe in my dream? And then after a while, I was like, oh no, this is just my mom. Like, she's just being my mom.
Yeah.
Because that's
Always
what my
looking
mom
out for
does.
you in her terms.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I think the third tool, because workout kind of does go with realignment. I think the third
Yeah.
tool would just be like looking for appreciation,
Looking for
especially stuff that
appreciation.
are,
That's a good one. Looking for
yeah,
appreciation.
yeah, and not from others to me, but like stuff that I might look at in a different way
Yeah.
and
Like
find
the
joy
fact that
in or
you have
happiness in.
paper to draw on and a freaking
That's a
tablet.
very good one.
Yeah.
I mean that alone is just huge. But also
Yeah.
just like little things like that with my mom, that thing of I could be going
Yeah.
like, oh fuck it, my mom doesn't trust like
Yeah.
my career or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's more like
Freaking
no,
math,
my
not art.
mom's way of expressing that she cares is this
Yeah.
thing of like, hey,
They should do like,
there you go.
hey, if you look at numbers, they're actually little drawings. Like try to draw number 1, number 2. Like, do you feel like drawing, son?
Oh.
That would be fun.
Oh, you just seen like my mom has never, you know, like in any large way displayed. My dad is probably more sort of. I mean, now they're both okay with it, but in the beginning, my dad was obviously more okay with the art than my mom.
Oh.
And the one time I saw my mom be really disappointed with me was when I had this is like in 7th grade or whatever, but I doodle like giant drawings of pirate ships fighting each other in my math book, and my teacher.
What else are you gonna do with it? I did the same.
I don't fucking know.
Ninja Turtles
I
and
done all
stuff.
my math.
Of course,
And
it's
this was
paper.
brought up in the but this was brought up in the student parent teacher conference when I was there, and they were like, "Oh, he's not paying attention in class, and he's drawing these things, and it's not great." And and my mom's like, "Evan, we've talked about this. You got it." And I just like, but I did the work, and I showed them I'd done all the work first, and then I did the pirate ship, and then they were all like, "Oh, okay, I guess that's fine." And I was like, "Fuck all of you!"
Yeah, victory for yourself. You probably planned that one, right?
Yeah. Oh, dude, you gotta hit the vindication is such a. Mwah.
Yeah.
It's the French chef kiss of all things. It's just.
Yeah, that moment, right? They like, you actually did it.
Yeah.
And you reward yourself with pirate ships.
Yes, more pirate ships. Always.
All right.
Yeah, but that's super important because I think again, like one of the
looking for
ways of battling because it's one of the things that depression can't stand. I think we are depressed when we feel detached and when we feel worried and anxious and we don't feel like we know where we're standing comparative to like the forward trajectory we expect, and like that lack of something is free floating. And I think once you figure out what you're really appreciative about, and that can be, you know, anything from, as you said, like a tablet and paper to just like friends and buildings and the fact that the sky is blue and the fact that this planet hasn't, you know, been hit by more meteors or whatever. Like,
yeah, at
all
that
those
point it's impossible to be depressed.
Yeah,
right.
Or not really.
Really,
like you can still be like,
yeah,
oh,
fucking
man,
tablet.
you know.
Yeah, I hate the tablet.
Or there might feel like with the laptop right now, it's just fucking, it's not doing great. I'm just like, you know what, you done me good service for 5 years. You could,
Yeah,
you
you're
good
all
laptop.
right. You're all right.
We'll figure you
figure
out,
it
buddy.
out.
Fine.
Yeah.
I appreciate that you do more computing work than my brain could do in 1,000 years. So we're good, buddy. Don't worry.
Yeah.
I appreciate you.
All right. So the next one would be, what are your emotional goals and targets moving on? Do you have one?
I don't know.
Are you pissed now?
I don't
Nowadays,
know.
are you depressed? Or you solved it all out?
No. I'm pretty good. Like,
all right,
again,
could it be better? Let me put it this way, Evan. Could there be a better Evan than the Evan today in terms of emotional state?
Let me put it like this, right? There could be more money. There could be a bigger house. There could be more cats.
Cats.
But I don't know if it could be better. I see, like, you know, but on sort of a core level, I have more than I could ever ask for. I mean, I'm not trying to be particularly humble, but no, like I don't feel. I think so. Like the sort of unspoken dream I think of
those are a
everyone
little
is
bit
to never have to work.
materialistic. How about more like mindset stuff? Like
friends, but I see what you mean.
It's like
well,
because you're a really technical person, you have a lot of like mindsets. It's more like installing a new software in your mind. Like if I could run like this, I could be more effective in this. It's kind of like
yeah,
that
but
in Evan
would I then
terms.
be Evan?
It will be Evan. It's just Evan
Well,
upgraded to whatever Windows like coming out.
I mean,
iOS
obviously,
15.
the answer there is yes, right? Like
Yeah, it's yes,
I
but can you
it would be
identify it?
impertinent and wrong. No, not at all. I think if I could, I would already have it. I don't know something that I
Isn't
would
that it?
like to be able to.
If you
Huh?
if you identify it, you could have it right now. Evan
Yeah,
2.0,
but I don't.
whatever the name is.
But that's the thing. I don't know that there's anything I want to
You
change.
haven't identified it at this moment. Could I say
No,
it like this?
and exactly right. And there might be something, but I gotta tell you, like
You're a
as
happy
far as
person.
life, far as life goes, I have nothing to complain about, which is about as happy as a Norwegian ever gets.
That's great.
No, yeah, I have a beautiful little apartment. I have a wife who I love dearly and who is amazing
You
and
don't want
who
a
is
pet tiger?
working in.
How about pet tigers? You sure?
I
Saber-tooth
literally
tiger?
have literally have two crazy cats at the moment. They are more than enough.
All right. That's great.
Uh,
That's good news.
yeah, yeah. No, I feel it's weird to sit in this situation where so much of the news you read is like it's a time of despair, and I'm
No,
like,
I
yeah,
totally
but
get it. It just goes back
a
to
lot of my
your
neighbors,
tip. It's just appreciation and
yeah,
being
and like
realistic.
even my neighbors are great. Like during the pandemic, we built a new bike shed, and
Wow.
they've taken interest in the garden. It's been great. So I'm just sitting here going like,
Hmm.
sound good actually.
Yeah.
Like if the genie has three wishes, pass a couple on to some other people. There are people who need more
Wow.
stuff than I do.
All right.
I
So
mean, and especially like creatively, like I get to work on my like little time thing, and I'm like, as far as a creative thing, right? Like a lot of the time, one goes around going like, is this the thing I should be working on? Should I be working on something else? And I'm like,
yeah.
I don't know if this time thing is going to become anything, but I know this is the thing I want to be working at. So that's what I'm doing,
Yeah.
and that's fun.
All right. So do you have a boiled down way to tell people that are suffering in depression right now that it's like a message for them to keep going on while they're
Mm.
pursuing art? So I'm struggling.
Uh,
I already bought into the
I'm
hustle culture. Why isn't this working out?
all right. Um, so there's a wonderful quote by is it Miyazaki? I don't think that's just Miyazaki. It's another one. So someone who's commenting
Another
on like
Asian.
the
All right.
no, yes, essentially
It's
just
all right. It's all right.
criticizing the hustle culture for saying that you can't worship the hustle and then be shocked when your culture is defined by hustlers, right?
Mm.
You're not if you're sitting there and you're feeling depressed because the hustle culture is not for you. Hustle culture is not for you, and hustle culture, I would argue, is not really culture at all. It's
Human nature of
cultural
some sort.
leeching. No, I think it's cultural leeching. I think it's taking
Mm.
a general ability to appropriate and to understand, and part huge personal drive, and part and parcel of like hustle culture is I got mine, Jack. This thing of like you work hard for you, and I'm like, it might just not be into that. But don't
Mm.
worry, there's the larger industry out there. And this industry is huge and it is growing. And even if people are sounding the bells of panic now and again, like people start in their 30s, 40s, 50s and get into this industry. There is nothing that's going to stop you from doing that. Um, this is an industry full of
It is just
nerds
gonna
and
be
geeks
better.
and
Like to be frank, like if anything, it's just gonna be better.
yeah,
Right?
and yeah, and I think a lot of people now, for example, are freaked out at like shitty, what's it called again, like a job application things where it's like, you gotta have 5 years
Yeah.
experience. No one's gonna check Just
Yeah.
ask,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
remember that whoever wrote that job thing is
Yeah.
just as clueless as you are, because
Yeah.
no one's doing that based on their passion or understanding of the job
Yeah.
market. They're just doing it because that's whoever their mentor was told them was a
Yeah.
good fucking hustler move.
Or maybe
So
their boss told them
don't
there better be 5 years up there. You better write that.
ex- exactly, right?
And
Because
it's
it's gonna
just
look
we
good on the
always
web thing.
redefining, right? Because
Yeah.
because there's gonna be new things coming up, and they just like for lack of a better term, they're just putting safe words there. Like I'm
Yeah,
gonna make
yeah,
sure,
yeah.
like,
It's jargon,
yeah,
and I agree. Like there's a lot of things that makes you anxious, and there's a lot of these. I mean, there's a lot of external and internal elements to this. So one thing is to kind of we spoke about alcohol before, but that AA mantra of, like, having the wisdom to know what you can and cannot change, and kind of leaving the stuff you can't change to one side, because you can't change it. So you just have to deal, and then having the strength to do that. That's one thing. And I think if you can do that honestly with yourself, after a couple of breaths and maybe a glass of wine, then
alcohol, man.
that is
Unlike
one.
other shows, we promote alcohol.
Yes. Now,
Sponsors,
I don't think
hit me
that's
up.
necessarily yeah, just we're sponsored by alcohol. No, but I think there is. I mean, I don't think. Oh yeah, I'm not going to get into that discussion. But I think it's
Mhm.
important that people figure out what works for them and not be
Yeah.
stuck in this idea that any of the fucking, like, so many people who I meet who are stuck in this loop of, like, ups and downs of mania and depression, and, like, oh,
Yeah.
they're breaking out of it and I found my new goal and back down.
That's just
These are
life, isn't
10.
it?
Yeah, but also this is life on fucking speed and hyper depressives, because you're on Instagram all the time and you're finding these,
Yeah.
like, guides,
Yeah.
10 steps to fix your life. And
Yeah.
you're like, nothing works like that. You are a
Yes.
monkey.
Especially art.
You are not.
Yeah.
No, yeah, and the people. I mean, you asked about spirituality before.
Yeah.
So do you know what straight line assumptions are?
Straight line assumptions. No, can you
Yeah,
explain?
it's a data set fallacy, meaning that you see a trend in a data set and you assume once that data set passes outside of its grid, it's going to just continue going exactly like it is. But that's just
Okay.
a faulty data set, right?
Yeah.
So because all data fluctuates. So a lot of depression comes from the idea of, like, it's bad now, it's never going to be not bad, and that is not helped by being
Yeah.
then sort of passively addicted to all of these social media sites that are essentially
Yeah.
saying, like, hey, look at all this happy stuff that's
Yeah.
unattainable for you, and all of these, like, shitty guides to get you that are not working. There must be something wrong with you, is the only conclusion you can draw if you're sitting there with some amount of cognitive function, and that's terrible. So don't do that.
Keep off social
Go out,
media.
take your monkey for a walk and breathe,
Feed it some
and
cookie.
my big fucking go-to these days, I
Other than
we've
alcohol.
been we well, much better than alcohol, is we binged the 6 seasons of Queer Eye on Netflix. That show, the new show, the one, I can't remember all their names, but, like, the one with Tan Paris and Jonathan Van Ness and stuff, is amazing, because
Really?
it's a show all about, yeah, it's and I don't want to pull too close of a parallel, but it's got this, like, Gene Roddenberry thing going, the Star Trek guy, because essentially they're only in the southern states of America, and they're mostly just taking on people who are either Republicans or not sort of in their wheelhouse.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's one conversation about politics. They're just being like, hey, you're a monkey, I'm a monkey, we know a little bit about style, you're obviously a fucking decent person, let's help out. And it's this thing, it's very fucking clever. It's this thing of, like, hey, you know what breeds positivity and therefore a willfulness of, like, the life of the republic, that is the fucking thing that, like, is going to drive America back to itself? Positivity. Go spread some positivity.
Yeah.
So I
That's a great
love that
line. I'm
show.
a monkey. You're a monkey. Let's do some monkey stuff, and we can all be happy.
Yes, exactly. But it's like, it sounds kind of simplistic, but it is the weird and strange truth that in
It
the
is.
end, right? We
Yes.
are just that. If you've ever had like a pet and you looked at your pet and you're like, why are you not happy, pet? And you're like, well, has the pet been outside? Has the pet gotten enough cuddles and good food? Has the
Yeah.
pet been distracted?
It's the same.
Like
Yeah.
it's exactly
Just
the
pet
same.
yourself. At the end
Yeah,
of the day, pet yourself.
they make that point, but it's
Yeah.
exactly that. It's not, well, if it's not just that, it's like self-care.
Yeah.
If it's
Yeah.
if it is like I'm
Yeah.
this situation is getting kind of crazy. So at some point I'm gonna have to take myself. I'm kind of looking forward to that now. Just going to like a hairdressing room, like you do your thing, and then I'm
Yeah.
gonna sit there and be pampered. Like do
Yeah.
that. Take a bubble bath. Take a
Yeah.
shower.
Yeah.
Go for a walk. Treat yourself.
Yeah.
You are a monkey, and you are the
Yeah.
fucking developer of your
I
own
think that
happiness.
realization is huge too. Like people nowadays are, we're humans, so clever. We are in a technology
Mhm.
state. I won't have monkey needs. I am not a monkey. That's the problem, right? Because
Exactly.
you need to realize, all right, people listening, like realize you're a monkey that tries to draw,
Mhm.
right? You're not a
Yes,
machine that
exactly.
draws. You're a monkey.
Uh-huh.
Like just do.
Exactly.
It's okay to do monkey things once a while
Yeah.
because you're a monkey.
So this is why, like, if people wanna sort of bolster themselves against sort of entropic feelings like that, like stuff that just diminishes down onto a center of zero,
Yeah.
read Epicurus. He's a great ancient Greek philosopher. Not to sound too pretentious, and not to be bringing
Epicurus,
Epicurus. He
Epicurus.
yeah.
Is it
So
that wise
most people who
king?
hear that. No. This
Not
is
that
a
one.
different
All
guy.
right. All right.
So this was one of the colleagues of like Socrates and Aristotle.
Oh,
And while
okay.
we've all heard of Socrates and Aristotle, that's
Yeah,
because those two
the
motherfuckers were
famous
both,
ones.
yeah. So no, Plato and Aristotle, sorry, because they were both students of Socrates.
All
And
right.
Epicurus was more of like a colleague of Socrates. And he's so Socrates is all about, like limited thought, and he's kind of Buddhisty and stuff. And then then Aristotle comes out and it's like, minimalist thought, right? Like you can only know what you can see ahead of you, and you can make rules and you can base things on those rules. And Aristotelian thought kind of goes towards that thing that we now call the scientific method. And then you have Platonic thought, which is more like, the city state is all, and the life of the city state is the life of the individual, and thinks about it because these are Greeks, right? So that's what they think about. And then Epicurus is out here going like, hey, you know what the good life is? Good life
Monkey.
is the same with, yeah, but essentially that. It's like, hey, you make yourself a little tribe of friends, you get yourself a nice little house, you make sure there's enough food and wine to go around, you make sure everyone has some time in the garden, some time for a walk, and time to sit down and have like wine and conversation. He's the in vino veritas kind of thing is a Latin reinterpretation of an Epicurean kind of core rule, which was this thing of I can't remember what it's called, but that thing of all discussion should come with wine, because a mind a mind whose doors are locked is a poor member of a conversation. So a drop of wine will kind of unlock.
Helps
Right?
you
It will take
helps
away.
you bring the monkey out, so to say.
It helps you lower the skepticism and kind of be open for arguments and stuff, right? So that's
Yeah.
Epicurean discussion. And I'm like that's we
Again,
should be trying to,
alcohol.
well, make it alcohol, make it weed, make it tea, make it
Yeah,
whatever
yeah.
the fuck like
Find your
opens you
alcohol,
up.
people. Find your alcohol.
Exactly.
Find your
Right?
drug.
Make it a banana.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like fermented
Yeah.
bananas. I'm sure they're great.
Cookies, bananas, whatever. All right.
But that thing, right? But
Yeah.
that's a big one for me. Go check out your Epicurus. That guy will save your life.
Epicurus. All right.
Yeah.
So wrapping up, we're in around 1.5 hours in. So
Oh dang.
yeah. Time
That went
flies.
fast.
Time flies. I'm having a great time.
Yeah.
I don't know about you.
Yeah, me
I'm
too.
having a great time. So number 1, take walks. And then number 2, realignment.
Mhm.
And then number 3 is looking for appreciation. It's
Yes.
3 things that fellow artists could try.
Yeah, or looking to express appreciation, I guess, just to be very clear about it.
All right.
Right? Like you're not looking for other people to appreciate you. You're looking for yourself to invest yourself in the world through appreciation, right? So
Yeah.
anything. Like I'm looking at my vacuum cleaner right now, and I'm like, I see you,
I
buddy.
could never build that.
Yeah. And just
Yeah.
like,
Look at you cleaning my house.
all the sweeping I would have to do.
Yeah.
I appreciate you.
All right. Do you want to plug anything?
Yeah, maybe the Patreon. Just like if people are interested in
Yeah,
we
I'll put
I
the
do
link down
streams like a
in
bunch
the
of
yeah,
yeah. So other
all right,
than that, nah.
Instagram.
Just good happy thoughts in life.
Yeah, amazing. So if people want to support the show, I'll put links for cryptocurrency down below as well. Thank you very
Mm-hmm.
much for Evan today. I had a great time. I hope you did
Me
too.
too, man.
Yeah, so I'll see you guys later. Hope you guys
Yes,
enjoyed.
sir.
All right. Let's see.